This podcast is sponsored by TGO Magazine.
Welcome to the first TGO Show Special podcast, where we take an extended trip with Cameron McNeish and KE Adventure Travel up Mount Ararat in search of Noah's Ark. These extended podcasts are intended to capture the full flavour of longer trips. So sit back as Cameron takes you to a far-off land and shares his experience and that of his fellow travellers, each of whom are climbing the mountain for very different reasons.
Istanbul, where West meets East, where Europe suddenly and without warning becomes Asia. According to an ancient myth, the first Turks were led out of Central Asia by a grey wolf, and they were probably the descendants of various tribal groupings of Central Asia. A first settlement was established in 657 BC, and it later became known as Byzantium. This empire remained until the Ottoman conquest of 1453, when the city was named Constantinople. Later, Istanbul became known as the Paris of the East and was connected to the French capital by rail, the Orient Express. Today, the city of 12 million people is a bustling, chaotic kind of a place, and while it certainly has its attractions like the Blue Mosque, the mind-blowing Hagia Sophia Church, or the rather opulent Topkapi Palace, I'm certainly not tempted to stay here for too long. Istanbul is simply a stopover en route to the east of Turkey, to the Armenian-Iranian-Turkish border. I'm heading for Mount Ararat, in search of Noah's Ark.
At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat.
We've flown from Istanbul for 2 hours eastwards across Turkey to the little town of Van, and from there we have a 2 or 3 hour road drive up towards the mountain itself. Somewhere along the road, we've been promised, we'll be able to stop and get our first glimpse of Mount Ararat. We're at an altitude of about 2,200 metres, and we're looking out over a great plain, like a great bowl in some low-lying hills, all pink and red, and looking across at the great upthrust of Mount Ararat itself. It's a great lump of a hill. It's cloud-capped at the moment, but there are great streaks of snow coming down from the summit. It doesn't look as though there's too much snow, actually, but it is immensely higher than anything in the surrounding area. And away to the right is Little Ararat, very conical, looks quite spectacular. But it is a tremendous landscape. There's lots of Kurdish people in little villages of some yurts, the Kurdish tents, and other small villages that look very much like the sort of little village you'd find in Nepal. And but dominating everything, this great thrust of Mount Ararat itself.
In the heart of Greater Armenia is a very high mountain on which Noah's Ark is said to have rested. It is so broad and long that it takes more than 2 days to go round it. On the summit the snow lies so deep all the year round that no one can ever climb it. But on the lower slopes the herbage is so lush and luxuriant that in summer all the beasts from near and far resort here, and yet the supply never fails. So wrote Marco Polo in 1295, and in fact Mount Ararat at 5,165 metres wasn't climbed until the early 19th century. The mountain proved popular with mountaineers until the mid-1980s, when it was closed down because of political unrest. It's really only in the past 3 years that Ararat has become accessible again, and even now you need special permits and the services of a local government guide. I travelled there as trek leader with an Anglo-American group. Our trip was organised by KE Adventure Travel. Well, we've had a night in a rather nice hotel at the foot of the mountain. The last opportunity really to shower and have a proper sit-down meal. And we've driven up this morning to a little hamlet by the name of Ely, where we've met up with our muleteers, 2 or 3 horses, loaded up the horses, and we've actually set out on the slopes of Mount Ararat itself. At the moment we're climbing up the lower slopes. It's a fairly arid kind of landscape, lots and lots of, surprisingly, Scotch thistles all over the place, and little patches of green here and there, obviously used by shepherds for sheep. There's a few cattle scattered about, but generally it's fairly scarce vegetation. Although in all areas like this, when it first appears fairly arid, you start to see the little flowers here and there, little clumps of them all over the place, and they really are rather pretty. So we've got a climb today of about 1,000 metres up to what is known as the Green Camp. Perhaps it was green once upon a time, but I'm told that nowadays it looks like a war zone. So many people pitching their tents there, all desperate to climb this mountain. So we'll see what it's like when we get there, but so far so good. It's a beautiful day. It's a little bit breezy. Temperature's around about 15, 17 degrees. Pleasant for walking. And so far nobody seems to be too worried by the altitude. I've got a fairly mixed group of ability with me on this trip, ranging from a 70-year-old retired mathematics professor from Arizona, who has climbed the highest point in every state in the United States, including Denali, Mount McKinley, right down to a lady who's never climbed a mountain, but is of Armenian background, and she's really desperate to get to the top of this mountain and look down on her homeland. In between, we have a young English chap who, for many years now, has been studying the whole subject of Noah's Ark, so I look forward to talking to him in more depth about the subject later on. Well, we've all made it to Green Camp, which is the first camp on Mount Ararat. We've had a climb of about 3,000 feet or so, and everybody's made it okay. It's taken us quite a long time, in fact. One or two in the group were pretty slow. I think feeling lack of exercise, to be honest, not terribly fit, and probably feeling the lack of oxygen just a little bit. We're camped up here at Green Camp at round about 10,600 feet. Around about 3,300 metres, so pretty high, particularly for those who are not used to these sort of heights. Anyway, it's good to be here. Green Camp is kind of spread out over quite a big area now. I guess at one time Green Camp was one small area surrounded by a wall, but it's pretty spread out now, and I've counted about 6 or 7 different groups camped in various spots. There's also some Kurdish shepherds camped in the area as well, so it's actually quite a lively place tonight. We've got Germans, we've got Dutch, we've got Americans, of course, some with our group, and English.
and a lone Scots, as far as I know. Anyway, so it's a fairly homogenous group. It's quite a happy place. Everybody seems in fairly good form. Our crew arrived ahead of us, set up a cook tent, made some tea, so when we all arrived, the tea was ready with some cakes and biscuits and everything. So that's always very, very welcome. Always very nice. So it's good to be here, delighted to be here, knowing that we've got an acclimatisation day tomorrow. So we'll climb up the mountain, maybe for another 1,000 feet or so, and then come back down here and sleep again tomorrow night in Green Camp. It's always good to climb the mountain, get some height, and then come down and sleep at a lower level. That's very, very good for the acclimatisation. The next day we'll climb up to the top camp, which is at 4,200 metres. So that'll be a fairly easy day, I think. I hope all going well. I hope the weather stays nice. And then the day after that, we'll head up. We'll leave out at 3 o'clock in the morning, head up the mountain, and get to the summit. All going well. As I mentioned earlier, everybody here has different reasons for climbing this mountain. Some simply want to bag the mountain because it's a kind of iconic mountain in many ways. Others have religious reasons for climbing the mountains. Others have an interest in the whole Noah's Ark story. So it's quite interesting to see how people react to the mountains, how they react to being here. So it's good to be here. I hope everybody sleeps well tonight. We're just going to go and have supper in about half an hour's time, so I think we're all looking forward to that. And then it'll be an early bed and a fairly early start in the morning. While we were at Green Camp, I took the opportunity of spending a bit of time with one of the trekkers, Diana Bloom from Oregon. Now, Diana, by her own admission, is no mountaineer. So I asked her what the motivation was to travel halfway around the world to climb Mount Ararat.
Well, my father was born in Beatles, which is a town just west of Lake Van, and my mother's family came from what is now called Diyarbakir, which is in the southeastern part of Turkey, and now both of those towns are mostly occupied by Kurds. As an Armenian, I've always known about Ararat, and we, as Armenians, regard it as a sacred mountain, and so it was always my desire to see it, and once actually having seen it both from the Turkish and the Armenian borders, I decided the next thing to do is to be able to touch it, and because of the military presence, it can be difficult to get close to the mountain, and joining an expedition is one of the sure ways of being able to approach the mountain and actually climb it. And so for me, it is a joy beyond words to be able to be here at whatever level I'm standing. The summit would be wonderful, but no matter where I am, I really feel the specialness of this mountain, and I feel really a part of it, and it feels a part of me. So I'm grateful to be here.
Forgive my ignorance, but I take it Armenia is a Christian country.
Yes, Armenia was the first country to adopt Christianity as its state religion, and that proved to be a difficult thing for them over centuries because of their geographic location amidst non-Christian countries. So they've been a crossroads for the Crusaders and many other armies. And I assume Armenia is being a Christian country, that this mountain is a sacred mountain because Noah's Ark landed here. Exactly, that's right. That's the belief. So do you personally believe the story of Noah's Ark and all the animals landing on this mountain, or do you see it perhaps as some kind of metaphor? Actually, I want to believe every bit of it, and a part of me believes it, but more as a metaphor for something greater. Can you expand on that? Well, I don't know that I can explain it, but it is a wonderful way to explain the beginning of civilization. And if you're a person of faith, you can kind of hold on to that. And it doesn't mean that you believe it word for word that it happened exactly that way, but it's sort of a symbolic beginning of humanity. This mountain also used to be holy in Armenia, didn't it? Always, yes. Yeah. From the very beginning. The Armenian presence has been here for close to 3,000 years. So beyond that, I don't know. I'm not versed in knowledgeable enough to know, but I know for sure. And it's always been the feeling that as long as there's Mount Ararat, there will also be in Armenia.
So how does it feel now that the mountain is in Turkish hands?
Well, it's still an Armenian mountain. It doesn't matter who happens to occupy the land. It's still an Armenian mountain. It will always be an Armenian mountain.
We're on day 3 on the mountain, and this is the day where we hike up to the high camp at around about 3,200 metres. It's also the day where we have to carry all our belongings. We've got some horses, and that high camp is in fact their high point, but they'll take our tents and stuff up there. We'll use the tents tonight. We'll sleep in the tent until about, I reckon, 2 o'clock or so. We'll have breakfast about 2 o'clock, and then all going well, we'll set off for the summit at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock in the morning, that is. A good alpine start. Everybody seems to be going well. We've no real problem with the acclimatization. Nobody's suffering from headaches or nausea or anything like that. One or two delicate tummies, but I guess that's to be expected when you come into an area like this. But generally speaking, everything's gone fine. Yesterday we climbed up to the high camp just as a form of acclimatization, and then dropped back down again to Green Camp and slept there. And that sort of acclimatization is very important. Perhaps not so much on a mountain of this height. At just under 17,000 feet, Ararat is kind of on that borderline. But certainly on any mountain higher than that, it's very good practice to ascend and then come down and sleep at a lower level. I reckon we're going to reach high camp fairly early today, probably about lunchtime, and I would think we'll spend the afternoon just organising ourselves for the summit tomorrow, making sure that our crampons fit our boots. You know, the last thing you want to do is when you hit the snow line and realise your crampons don't fit, and then you've got to sit there with cold hands and readjust everything. So we'll check that out, look out the ice axes, get our clothing organised for tomorrow, because it's going to be pretty cold. I reckon it's usually about -10 when you set off from summit camp. And I'll kind of go over the theory of ice axe breaking and walking in crampons for those who are not too familiar with those techniques. It's not an ideal situation in many ways. It'd be nice if we had some nice easy snow slopes for people to practice on, but unless they want to practice on steep scree, then I'm afraid all I can really do is go over the theory, and if you get a chance higher up when we hit the snow, we can have a bit of a practice. You know, once again I find myself on a mountain wishing I knew an awful lot more about the flowers, wishing that I had a kind of elementary knowledge of botany, because the flowers up here are absolutely sensational. All different colours, from bright oranges to the most delicate pale blues of the forget-me-nots. I've seen bunches of flowers that look for all the world like Edelweiss, but Dietmar, who's our resident German in the group, tells me that it's definitely not Edelweiss, although it may well belong to the same family. But lots of beautiful flowers, lovely orangey flowers that look for all the world like dandelions, to other flowers that look like wood anemones, although I'm sure they're not way up here. A huge variety. And you know, the incredible thing is that these flowers are growing in an environment that is incredibly inhospitable. They're kind of clinging on to life amid the rocks and the screes of this high mountain. And I suppose if I was to put my kind of moral tone preacher's hat on for a moment, I might recognise that there is some kind of metaphor for life there, that even in the most hostile environment, these are little elements of nature that show remarkable resilience. And not only remarkable resilience, but astonishing beauty. It's quite extraordinary, but I had this vision of the top camp being a cold, windswept place, covered in rock and really not very pleasant. But the fact of the matter is we've kind of spent the afternoon lying sunbathing in temperatures that are well in the 70s, very little wind, a tremendous view below us and around us, and it really has been quite idyllic. We managed to find a little patch of snow not very far from our tents, and I spent some time teaching 2 or 3 of the folk cramponing techniques and ice axe breaking techniques. But other than that, it's been a kind of lazy afternoon. And, I find it hard to imagine that at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, this place is going to be -10, bitterly cold, possibly very windy, and we'll all be wrapped up to the 90s. But I think the thing is just to make the most of it while we can, and we've certainly done that. I'm sitting just outside my tent, which is pitched on a lot of rocky screes and gravel. There's a bit of a rock wall around the tent, and away to my left, across what is known as the lava plateau, I'm looking at Little Mount Ararat. It's a typical conical volcanic shape, and you can really just imagine it as a volcano. And below it, this screes running down below it onto this massive plateau that is just covered in old lava flows. Here and there are little patches of green, but predominantly the pastel shades of red and orange and blue. It really is quite an extraordinary landscape. And that stretches away into distance into what is in fact Iran. So we're not very far from Iran. I reckon about 10 kilometres to the Iranian border. And further round, I can't quite see it because of the bulk of the mountain, but just further round to my left, I would be looking at Armenia. So we're really at a bit of a crossroads here between east and west, with Armenia, Iran, Turkey, and this mountain right in the centre of it. So it's an astonishing place to sit and just kind of look around, just waiting for dinner. And then it'll be an early night and a very early rise for the summit climb in the morning.
Everyone appears to have different reasons for climbing this mountain. Tim Weeks from England has made a long-term study of the legend of Noah's Ark. I asked him how his interest in Mount Ararat began.
I first became interested in Mount Ararat through Noah's Ark. That all started actually from, I was going on holiday and I got a book by Graham Hancock all about the Ark of the Covenant and his search, and I really liked the way that he described his search, referring to details in modern time, looking at history from a modern viewpoint. And it was only after I read that I started thinking about Noah's Ark, and I was thinking, well, if he believes the Ark of the Covenant exists, then surely there must still be some evidence of Noah's Ark. So I went to the internet and had a look, and the first thing I came across was the Darupanar site, which is in the foothills of Ararat. So I arranged to come here to see it initially with a couple of friends, and we saw it, and we came away with the opinion that although there was good evidence, the evidence was biased to the people who were looking for it, who found it rather, and they wanted to prove it was the site purely because they found it. But I went away and studied even further, and Mount Ararat obviously is the central focal point for the Noah's Ark story. The biblical description says that the Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and although Mount Ararat is made up of two peaks, Lesser Ararat and Greater Ararat, many people feel this is a good description, although Ararat is derived from the term Urartu, which encompasses many mountains in the sort of Caucasus and Zagros range. So although I did later on believe that Mount Ararat couldn't be the actual mountain of the Ark, it did lend a big part of interest in my research, and I came on this trip primarily to sort of I wanted to be on the mountain, be part of the mountain, and what's very interesting for me is the fact that there have been many sightings that have been disproved of the Ark on the mountain. And for example, today when we went up to the 4,100 metre mark, and we could see the ice cave, and that was a famous point at one point that people believed was the Ark. And it's just amazing to be on the mountain really, and enjoy being here.
So what age were you when you first read this book that started off this interest?
It was actually about 5 years ago, actually, so it's quite a modern development for me. Although I did have I wouldn't say a strong Christian upbringing, but I had a good Christian upbringing. My parents weren't forceful or anything, and so I had a good background for all the biblical stories. But it was that really, I was going on holiday and I wanted a nice big book, and the only reason I actually chose that one initially was I was quite interested in the story, but it was a nice big book as well. So yeah, it started about 5 years ago. Yeah.
So if you're not too sure the Ark actually rested on the top of this mountain, I mean, where have your researchers led you? Where do you think it may be, if there is such a thing indeed as an Ark? Okay,
well, from like the biblical viewpoint, there are many different sort of stories that do tell the Ark story, but from the biblical viewpoint, first of all you can knuckle down the region of Urartu or Ararat. There are other mentions of Ararat and descriptions. For example, I can't think of the name, but the descendants of Noah, I think the great-grandson, it is quoted in the Bible that they ventured from the east to Shinar. There's a bit dubiosity there because different versions of the Bible say that they moved eastwards to Shinar rather than from the east, but the actual Hebrew word is Mikadem, which does actually say from the east. And Shinar is actually modern-day Baghdad, so really you'd have to look at a range that was roughly to the east of Baghdad. And really, I believe there are two rivers sort of on the border with Iraq and Iran that are the Upper Zab and the Lower Zab rivers, and I believe the sort of area in between there is a good point where the Ark could be.
I guess politically it'd be quite difficult to go and search there at this moment in time, but do you have any ambition to go there and have a look yourself?
Yeah, actually, 3 years ago I went there to have a look, and I went with a friend from work. Working for an airline is great because travel is quite cheap, and when I suggested to him that I wanted to go, he likes to go to any country, so he decided, he'd come along. But we found we had trouble getting close to the border area, especially as the war had just kicked off. So I think in the future I would like to go there and actually, follow up my conclusions and see if I can find the Ark. Yeah.
So tell me what you hope to achieve from climbing this mountain, from climbing Mount Ararat itself.
Well, I think because initially, when someone does initially look at the Noah's Ark story, obviously Ararat is the mountain that everyone thinks of, and seeing that I spent a lot of time looking at a lot of possible sightings on Ararat, it really became a big part of me, and it was one thing that I thought really, seeing all these explorers coming up here, it was one thing that I thought I just wouldn't really be able to do. So when I found out KE were doing a trip here, I thought, I want to be part of that, and just to stand on the summit will be great and look out. Yeah.
Good, that's fantastic. Now, we've been up quite high today, up to 4,200 metres, as you mentioned. Coming down that hill, I was trying to think of what it would have been like seeing a couple of elephants come down there, or a couple of giraffes. I mean, do you honestly believe that was the case?
I do believe in the story. I believe it is true. I think there are too many sort of adaptations in different religions for it not to be true, but I know what you mean. Going up the steep slopes and seeing the horses struggling to come down, I was thinking, horses are quite well suited for this terrain, and to imagine a hippopotamus or a rhinoceros, and what you said, an elephant, I think that would be very difficult.
And if we got up there tomorrow or the next day and you came across a great big bit of wood sticking out of the snow,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you'd get fairly excited, huh?
I would do, yeah, but in fairness, many people have brought down bits of wood from the top, and being such a sort of holy mountain, there have been many shrines built up there, so I think if you were to argue that it could be a part of Noah's Ark, I think immediately people would say it's part of a shrine that was built in the last 100 years.
An alpine start is a curiously nervy affair. You wake up in the middle of the night, it's usually pretty cold, your fingers are cold and refuse to do what they're supposed to do. The strapping of crampons can be almost impossible sometimes. And yet, despite all that, there's a kind of a thrill, there's a kind of an excitement flowing around. It's dark and you're kind of heading off from the comfort of your warm tent into the darkness, usually upwards, following those pools of yellow light that come from your head torch. Seeing the little beams of light walking on in front of you can be strangely exciting. This morning it's not nearly as cold as we expected. We were thinking it might be as cold as -10, but it's nowhere near that. In fact, I think it's just probably hovering around freezing. There's a light breeze. The tent's just sort of flapping very gently, so it's all looking good. The stars are out. The sky is pretty clear, and we're just going to go and have a little bit of breakfast, and then head off up the mountain. So how does it feel this morning, Bob?
Oh, I feel great.
Yeah, all ready to go?
Oh, sure.
Did you sleep well?
Oh, yeah, fine. No problem.
Because you're quite well used to all these kind of early starts, aren't you?
Yeah. I can't say I like them. But they work.
Yeah, you sure do. How about you guys? How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, sleep soundly?
Yeah.
Oh, you got water already? Good.
How do you feel getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Deeply unnatural.
Yeah, it's midnight at home.
Yes, it is. Oh my God.
No, we use your Mars bar trick.
Yeah, I got my Mars bar. Probably almost got
Tim, you're doing all right, huh?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Any headache?
A little one.
Not any worse than yesterday.
No, definitely not.
And how are you this morning, Dagmar? Did you sleep well?
No.
As an honest man.
Yeah.
You know, the tent rattling, and I get just the way things are.
I think it might be a 4 sugar cube there.
Sometimes it's a relief just to get up, isn't it?
Yeah. That's exactly what it was. Time to go.
I'm sort of quite awake in the dark, standing around making tea.
I'm a little concerned about the weather here, huh?
Well, that cloud has been building up, but it's kind of breaking up again. Mammoet says it's not a problem.
No, it's normal here, huh?
Charlotte, what about this cloud? Is it going to be a problem?
I don't know about that. Hopefully not.
Did you sleep well?
I slept well, thank you very much.
Good.
Hopefully not. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we booked for good weather.
Oh yeah.
You know, this
I'll arrange that a little bit later.
Okay. Here we are, 4,500 metres. How do you feel?
You want the truth?
Yeah.
I feel good.
You guys
I really
are going
feel
well.
great. It's fabulous out here.
Fantastic.
You guys have obviously done this before.
Not too many times, but it feels good.
Great.
This is
This is great.
one way to spend the morning, huh?
a little hike up the mountain.
And it's only after 5 o'clock.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, we did good. Really
5 after 5.
We're doing excellent.
Well done, guys. 4,500.
Oh, halfway then, isn't it?
Yeah. How are you feeling, Tim?
Okay, getting there.
How's the headache?
It's okay.
On a scale of 1 to 10?
It's only that.
Oh, that's
2?
good.
Okay.
Look at the shadow.
Yes.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, actually the picture's now better than before.
We've still got the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
My hand's getting hot. I put them on, take them off.
How are you, Mustafa?
Fine.
You're good.
I feel good.
Our mountain guide.
There's no problem.
Good.
Bob Packard is one of America's most prolific peat baggers. He's climbed the high points in all the US states, and he's climbed some pretty big mountains in his time. I asked him what the attraction was of Mount Ararat.
Well, okay, Cameron. The two reasons that come to mind at the top of the list would be, number one, it's the high point of a country. Number two, it's one of the 50 most prominent peaks in the world, and later on perhaps we'll have a definition of prominence. And thirdly, it's in a part of the country, a part of the world I hadn't been before, and has interesting culture surrounding it. I guess those would be the... Oh, and it finally popped into my radar of things to do at this particular moment, and I would say those would probably be the four reasons primary.
Okay, explain to me, what is a prominent peak?
Well, okay, here's the precise definition. Number one, you have to have the altitude of the peak. Number two, you start drawing contour lines around the peak. And you keep lowering the contour line around the peak, summit, until you are forced to include in that contour loop a higher peak than the peak for which the prominence that you're interested. And so it's getting to the stage now where quite a few people are making lists of mountains based not on their altitude, but on their prominence. Because a very crude but imprecise definition would be how high the mountain rises from its immediate terrain.
What are your expectations of this particular mountain? Do you think it's going to be difficult?
Well, I've been told it's not that difficult. I've climbed enough mountains in the world and have had enough experience to kind of get a feeling in advance as to how hard it was going to be. You know, a little bit of hard work, but not too particularly difficult.
Well, we've just passed the 4,900 metre mark. We've got about 250 metres to go to the summit, and we've changed into crampons. It's all snow from here on. I'm following a fairly broad ridge that leads up to a sort of big, what looks like a big knob of ice, and then a broad ridge runs off to the right and leads up to the summit. It is pristinely beautiful up here. There's something special when you get up onto the snow, and you don't have to clamber over icy rocks and all the rest of it. I'm feeling the altitude slightly, as you can probably hear from my lack of breath, but it's good to be so close to the summit, and I think we're probably about an hour away from it.
How does it feel to be so close to the summit there?
It feels good actually, almost within reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it been like this morning?
It's been quite difficult actually. I found it quite tough with the loose rocks, and then when we hit the snow and it was a mixture, I didn't know whether to stick with the snow or on the loose rocks, but now it's all snow and with the crampons it looks good, so yeah, target within range.
Feel like a real mountaineer now, huh?
I do. Well, I look like it, I don't know if I feel like it.
Well, Charlene, how are you?
I feel real great, and I'm very happy that most of our team will make to the summit. At least only one person is not coming, and the last one is just struggling now, and she'll make it.
Good, excellent. Well, we're not far from the summit, 250 metres or so?
I think so, it's like 250 meters.
Good. And the weather looks good, it looks pretty settled, so yeah, fingers crossed.
Bit windy, but it's very nice. Sun is shining, everyone is happy. We're gonna make to the summit.
Yo! Well, here we are on the summit of Mount Ararat. No sign of Noah's Ark that I can see, but it is extremely windy. We're looking down a fantastic view of the lava plateau looking across at little Mount Ararat. It looks absolutely fantastic. There's a clear blue sky. It's just absolutely terrific to be up here. Not an awful lot to mark the summit, just a little tin box with, I think it's probably just a little summit book in it. But you really do feel as though you're on the very roof of Asia up here. It's really great to be here. Charlene, how does it feel to have guided 7 out of 8 people to the summit of Mount Ararat?
It feels wonderful, wonderful. I cannot say anything else.
How many times have you been up here before?
This is my second time.
Oh, your second?
Yeah.
Good.
But it's great. It's going to be getting great every time that I'm going to be here.
Great, that's good to hear. Now, you're born in Turkey, you're born in Istanbul.
Yes.
You must be very proud to have a mountain like this in your country.
I love it. I love it. And hopefully I will climb to other mountains.
So what's your message to all the people in the UK and United States of America who haven't been here before?
They definitely have to come here. It's wonderful. It's terrific.
Good, thank you.
Here.
Okay, now let's have a word with the guys who have made it. John and Tim, congratulations, guys. John, how does it feel?
Cold but satisfying.
Okay, well that's fairly succinct, I suppose. Tim, have you got anything more to add to that?
Oh, it's an amazing feeling, really. You're definitely on top of the world here, way above everything else. It's absolutely brilliant.
Are you going to have a little look around for the Ark, or are you quite satisfied that it could well be somewhere else?
I'm quite satisfied that it's somewhere else, and it's a bit too cold to stay up here now to have a look.
I think you're right. Get the photographs and off back down the hill again. Well done, everyone.
Well, we might not have found Noah's Ark, but we did enjoy a memorable experience on Noah's Mountains. At the moment, the political situation in eastern Turkey is pretty stable, but you still need special permits and the services of a government-registered guide to climb the mountain. Check it out at www.keadventuretravel.com for more information. Meanwhile, my thanks for their help in compiling this podcast go to Zahara, Diana, Elizabeth Dietmar, Bob, John and Tim, and to our Turkish guides Charlan and Mustafa. And not to forget our wonderful cook, Mahmoud. Thanks also to KE Adventure Travel for making it all possible, and to the PodSave Music Network for supplying the music.
There will be more extended TGO Special podcasts coming soon, so make sure you subscribe to the Outdoors Channel podcast feed for this and the regular monthly TGO magazine shows. Any feedback on the TGO Special podcasts and the TGO magazine shows are welcome via www.tgomagazine.co.uk.
This podcast is produced and hosted by the Outdoors Channel. To find out more, visit theoutdoorschannel.co.uk.